Hello, I'm Luke Stevens, the Level 3 course leader for Media Makeup at Cambridge Regional College, and today I'm going to show you how to do a relatively simple burn effect. Okay, so to start, you're just a little bit of an equipment list as the kind of things that you're going to need. So first of all, you'll need some alcohol activated paints like this to paint the cap plastic and to paint the skin. You'll also need some cap plastic, and I prefer to use the acetone dissolvable cap plastic for reasons that I will tell you about in just a second. You'll also need some translucent powder, some Prosade, and also some brushes to paint with. These ones are just very quick brushes that I grabbed because thankfully this one doesn't require any too great precision. So first thing I did was I took a flat surface. You can use a glass tabletop or something that's smooth. I would cover it in a release agent or something like Vaseline first of all so that it does it. I actually used the side of a redhead to paint on some cap plastic, which I've painted while it was still on the head with some alcohol-based paints as well to look like a burn. A lot of people like to cover, when they're doing a burn, this completely in black, but actually I think if you've got the translucency of the cap plastic and you've painted on top of it, you end up with a more realistic effect when it comes down to it, because black is obviously completely opaque and it doesn't show anything through it. That said, what I have also done is spent a little bit of time just having a look at some burns online, and I have painted my arm so that the cap plastic will then show some of that through as well and add a little bit of texture on the top. So this is painted with the alcohol-based paints, and I've just very gently gone in with about 6 different colours, so yellows, reds, there's a little bit of blue in there as well. And again, because this is actually going to be covered, it doesn't have to be too precise, but it's always a good idea just to reference your images to the best of your ability so that you're able to get a realistic representation of the kind of colours that you would see in any given burn situation. There are several things that you can do underneath this as well if you wanted to add further texture and make it look like a particularly nasty burn or scar. What you could do is you could apply some silicone or maybe even some latex on top of this as well, so that when the cap plastic lies over the top of it, it actually creates more of a shape. But as you can see, I've actually shaped the plastic to be kind of stretchy anyway, so that we get those kind of texture coming through already. So I'm not actually going to apply anything onto this because I want to keep it relatively quick and quite simple. So the first thing I'm going to do is just take some Prosade in a tiny little glass jar. I'm not going to need a huge amount actually. Probably that is enough, more than enough. And then I'm going to take some cotton buds or a brush. I prefer to use cotton buds because it doesn't ruin the brush. And I'm just going to pick up some of the Prosade here, and I'm going to go over this area as much as I can with the Prosade. Again, I'm not going to cover the area completely because there are parts of the cap plastic that I want to kind of stand up and, you know, create a little bit of texture. Now, Prosade obviously being a non-contact adhesive, that means that it's not kind of sticky until it goes clear. So I'm just gonna go over there. And obviously because I'm using this on myself, I'm using the same cotton bud. If I was using it on somebody else, I would maybe use several different ones. So you can start to see that the Prosade has started to go off a little bit now. And I'm gonna over glue as well. So I'm gonna glue over the area that I plan to put the plastic, just so that I've got a little bit of flexibility when it comes to moving the plastic around. what I'm going to do now with that is I'm going to take the cap plastic. You get a few minutes for the Prosaid to go off, so it's not sticky quite yet. But when it starts to get a little bit tacky, still a little bit wet, you can take your cap plastic. Now I'm going to take, there are two sides, obviously there's the shiny side, which is the side that goes on, which is the side that's on the cap at the head or the surface as you're pulling it off. And then this side here is a matte side. Now I'm going to use the matte side on top because what I want it to do is I can add any of the shapes and colours afterwards. I'm going to find that easier to do. So I'm just going to roughly stick that on. You can see it's already grabbed there. And you can see I've actually got some holes in there as well, which were not deliberate, I'm not going to lie, but actually make quite a nice effect when it comes to sticking it on. So I'm just going to glue that down now, just using a brush, or make sure that goes down over there. I'll pull that in a striation, pull those away. And the reason that I used acetone based cap plastic is because there's a lot of paint going on here, or there will be. So I wanted the paint to stay put whilst we put the cap plastic where we wanted it. And the reason for that is because if I'd have done an alcohol based cap plastic, what would have happened is as I painted it, it would have degraded it to the extent that I wouldn't have had control over where the holes were or anything else. So you can see I've got some sort of burnt colours and some various different bits of flesh colour in there as well. And what I'm going to do is just glue that bit down as well. And just under there. Just use this brush to stick it down. So I'm going to give that probably, I would say, probably a minute or so maybe to dry and to set the glue. And although it doesn't look like much now, what I'm then going to do is take a pot that has glass jar. Always better to working with acetone, purely because acetone will just melt through any plastic eventually. It becomes quite messy. And I'm going to put that on top of a piece of kitchen roll as well so it doesn't spill. Let's put that there. So once you're kind of confident that this is relatively secure on the skin, what you can then do is take a brush, and I'm just using the acetone and dabbing it on the top of the cap plastic here and bleeding away the edge. To blend it into the skin. Again, you can use any size brush. Just for speed, I'm using quite a large brush that will just gently blend that into those areas where it looks like it's not completely seamless. With the acetone and the cap plastic, I find that if you paint it on first and then leave it for a couple of seconds and then go back to it with your brush, you can then start to smooth it in a little bit better. You just need to give the acetone a chance to work on the skin itself, on the cap plastic. Don't worry about the colour bleeding out, that's good, because I've deliberately over-coloured this piece for that very reason, is that I want the colours to move around and come off very slightly when I start to go over it with acetone, so that the colours then become more translucent, and you start to see a little bit more of what was going on underneath. So I'm just going to dig around on the edges there with this stiff brush just to pick up those pieces. And the more acetone you put on, you'll start to see it will start to make holes in the cap plastic, so it will start to look like there's kind of scars and bits and pieces happening on the skin. You can see that there. This would also be a really good effect, maybe for kind of a corpse or dead skin. So I'm going to keep going over that with the acetone. This is, again, this is one of the disadvantages of using acetone, is that you can't really use it close to the eyes or the mouth, but on large areas of skin like the arms or the legs or back or anything like that, it's absolutely perfect for. I mean, I have used acetone-based cap plastic around people's eyes and what have you, and it's never really been a problem. You've just got to be really, really careful about where it goes. But I do prefer the plastic that is acetone dissolvable over the IPA, despite the fact that it's quite a nasty chemical, acetone, but it works so much better. And I think as long as you protect the skin properly, you have a really good chance of actually getting a fantastic result. If you can see that, it's starting to come off now and starting to blend in really well. Just going to pick bits off now. Now that I've kind of flattened all that in, I'm just going to go in and dig around in it and make some holes in the plastic and get some of the colours that I've painted in underneath to come through and make it look like it's charred skin. There we go. You can start to see the little bits that are appearing of the skin looking like it's been flayed off. I'm just going to use some more acetone now because I've run out. There we go. And this brush is great for that because it's got a nice stiff head on it, which means I can really get in there and pick it about. There we are. It's going in different directions. And then this is the advantage of having the translucency of the cap plastic over the top of the paint job that you've already done on the skin. As you get this really nice, as you can start to see, it picks up the colour underneath quite well. There we go. You can start to see it's looking a little bit charred now as well. So once you've got the kind of the effect that you want on there of the cap plastic and the formation of the skin and what have you, what you can start to do with with your alcohol-based paints is to start to pick out the bits that you really want to highlight. So I'm going to get some isopropyl alcohol. There we go. and just start picking out the bits that are burns, really. So one of the colours that I love to use in burns is like a yellowy colour, because you get that fleshy, kind of fatty finish to it. So I'll just sort of go over though, pick up the low lights of that with quite a diluted yellow. And again, because burns tend to be quite random in their effect on the skin, you don't have to be so precise when you are applying your colour. So it really is just very broad strokes are really good to use for this. And just keep going over until you're happy with the result that you get. And I always find that a thin wash of colour is much better than a solid colour when it comes to painting these in, because you have more control, and obviously skin is translucent as well, so even if it has been burnt, you'll still see parts of that coming through. So I've just sort of highlighted that with that yellow colour. Now what I'm going to do is take a red colour and mix that again, make it look quite a fleshy red, like it's quite raw. I'm just going to go over and pick out the points with some red there. I have a real play with this, and as I said, if you go in quite gently with the colours and do really thin layers, you can get a really good effect. And then just keep going over until you've got the finish you want, rather than going in with a solid colour. The other thing that will happen with the alcohol-based paints is that when they dry quite matte, but I'm going to show you how to counter that in just a second, because this doesn't need powdering at all. There we are. I'm just going to turn that around. I'm doing this with quite a small brush. If you were to do this with a larger brush, obviously it would take you less time. But again, one of the things that's really easy to do here is too much, and then it becomes very difficult for you to take it down. So if you are going in with less and kind of building up those colours, you'll find it a lot easier to get the right effect. And always to kind of take a little bit of time just to step back from it and have a look at the work that you've done to decide whether or not you want to do any more. See that lovely yellow colour there that's just picked up that kind of fleshy burn finish. I'm going to go in with some more yellow actually. Just to build up that fleshy, fatty kind of finish there. And then just as a general wash, what I'm going to do is very lightly just go over everything with a little bit of isopropyl alcohol as well, which will flash off in a matter of seconds. And it just thins it out and makes it a little bit more translucent. And I'm just going to take some of that colour and work it around the wound as well. And again, there's no hard and fast way of doing this. It's really a random exercise for you. Just keep going in. And that took me black, just char that in, blend it in, kind of singed skin. So I'm just going to fan that a little bit and make sure that it the alcohol flashes off it, because it does go matte. And then what you can do is pop some, because this isn't going to move, this is going to sit pretty well under any circumstances. But what I am going to do is just make it look a little bit more raw with a little bit of Vaseline, and just take a tiny amount of Vaseline and just tap that over the top of it. You can use a lip gloss as well if you want. Vaseline isn't going to interfere with anything. It's a petroleum jelly, so it's water resistant. Be careful how much you use. You don't want to use too much, just a tiny amount. And that just gives it life, makes it look more real. And then I'm just going to take a tissue. This one actually has got alcohol, and just dab it down a bit, take away some of that shine. And that is really how to do a really quick and effective burn with some cat plastic and some very easily accessible products. So I hope that works for you.